it's sadness with a tinge of warmth to it. There's some sort of hopefulness.
Hi, I'm Vlad Bresnix, and welcome back to the BresnixCast, episode number 65. And this time I was joined by Josh Zimmer, who is the man behind Project Atlantic. And he is primarily a musician, but Josh is also a filmmaker and a photographer, and we get into all that kind of thing during the course of the interview. Very interesting stuff, and I think you're going to enjoy it. So let's start by hearing some of Josh's stuff. So this is the title track of his latest EP. This is Moving On. So I am here with Josh Zimmer. Josh is the man behind Project Atlantic. Josh, thanks so much for coming on the show.
Thank you very much for having me. I'm really excited.
Yeah, absolutely. And, Project Atlantic, as I understand it, was music, and now it's branched out into so many other things that we will get to talking about, like photography and film and stuff. But for any of our listeners who might not have heard of you before, why don't you tell us like a bit about yourself and how Project Atlantic got started?
So I'm Josh. Project Atlantic is my, I guess, title that I put all my artwork out under, mainly music, but also, like you said, filmmaking stuff, also photography. I do a bit of writing as well. So Project Atlantic was something that I started because I had all these little projects. I should say I'm a musician first and foremost, so I started with music as my main project. And it kind of just snowballed with all these little things that kept adding up, and I needed something to kind of put them out under. I didn't want to do my own name because I thought that was kind of corny. Plus, I don't think I would make a very good, solo artist with, I can picture the person on the radio saying, the latest hit by Josh Zimmer. It wasn't like the route I wanted to go under. So I kind of took a page from the playbook that someone like Justin Vernon from Bon Iver, or what's the other one? The Album Leaf, the guy whose name escapes me who does that, but kind of a single person putting out artwork and music and different things under just this one kind of banner. And because of that, it doesn't have to be really restrictive. It can kind of be whatever I want it to be. Project Atlantic can incorporate any of my other friends who do music or film, and I can collaborate with them and just put it under the Project Atlantic banner. And I've been doing it for about mainly the music. I've been doing it under Project Atlantic for about 5 or 6 years now. And then I just added on some filmmaking and photography as well.
Yeah, and I if we stick with the music, like at first, I really like what you do because, it's interesting because like a lot of the time it's quite contemplative in general, and sometimes like, you take it different places and you never really know what you're going to get. And, I think sometimes it gets quite epic, you'll start with something kind of maybe slow and it'll build and build, and then before you know it, we're rocking, you know what I mean? So like, it seems like you're incorporating a lot of influences, but I think it works. I think it's like kind of its own thing.
Oh yeah, thank you. Yeah, definitely. Like that's the intention, is like you said, slow builds. When I was in high school, I was probably about 16 or 17. I first heard the band Sigur Rós, and that's exactly what they do in their music. And I was completely taken away by it. And I was like, wow, if there was a type of music that kind of, created this atmosphere and took you somewhere, and the place you end up is completely different than the place you started at. That's the kind of music I would want to make. And it took me a handful of years to be able to get to the point where I could craft those songs to kind of go that way. But yeah, that's awesome that you picked up on that, because that's pretty much, for the most part, I mean, like you said, there's songs that kind of vary with that. But that, when I started out making the music for Project Atlantic, that was my intention, is to start small and go somewhere big, and see how many little emotional beats I can hit throughout the pieces before I get to that climax and the ending.
Yeah, and actually, I like Sigur Rós too. I've seen them live, and it was just insane. It was like one of the best gigs I've ever seen. And but let's talk about your latest EP. It's called Moving On, and I'd listened to it like kind of before. I'd kind of read your blog post where you kind of described it in more detail. And when I first listened to it, I'd kind of it was almost like I was getting the impression, if you take the first 3 songs, that like you'd say something had happened, like a breakup, and then you were kind of reconsidering it, and then by the time you're just whistling about it and you're kind of moving on in a way. But then I kind of read more, but that was my kind of interpretation, just hearing it first time. But tell us what it really was.
You're not too far off. That's actually, I'm thrilled that you got that out of that. Actually means a lot to me. Yeah. Not to get too specific into anything, but yeah, it has to do with moving on from, like you said, relationship, or going away from something you thought. It's a little hard to explain. It's something you thought it was going to be something, and that never actually happened. It was something that never manifested, and you have to, I've made lots of different choices in life, and a lot of times that choice was to not move on from something. But in this case, I decided to move on, and like you said, there was the track 3, Quiet Man Go. The happy whistling song, which it kind of does reach that point where things go a little bit better when you do move on and get past things. So yeah, there's a lot to it, and it is a little bit difficult. I've thought about it myself. I've never actually spoken about it, but yeah, you're on the right track with your interpretation and everything, which is cool. Yeah.
And what I kind of liked about it as well, particularly, was that even though you can feel there is like an emotional sadness to it, it does hit you in the feels, so to speak. It also kind of like, there's like a playfulness to it at the same time. It's almost like, in a way, like if you think of like The Cure with depressing lyrics and happy music,
yeah,
it's sort of like, mixing those two things, but you're doing it in a different and kind of more abstract way, if you know what I mean.
Yeah, cool. Yeah, that's yeah. I think the word that comes to mind when I was putting those songs together, and most of the Project Atlantic songs, was melancholy. And so the way I look at that is there is this tinge of sadness to it, and it's not completely hopeless or depressing and completely distraught, but it's sadness with a tinge of warmth to it. There's some sort of hopefulness, and there's reasons for things not going right. There's reasons for disappointment, and when certain situations don't work out. And a lot of the music that I have made, and especially this EP, comes from that idea that there's hope in undesirable circumstances, and there's purpose in undesirable circumstances. I do believe that there are reasons why we go through things, and you can either choose to not move on from them and completely dwell on them, and that can lead you to some dark places, and that usually doesn't do you any good. Or you can move on from those things, you can learn from those things, and then you're at the happy whistling song. Yeah.
Yeah, I know what you mean. And one thing I wanted to ask you as well is, what made you want to do a Christmas EP?
Oh, that was something that I had just always wanted to do. I like Christmas music. I get some flack for it, but I even listen to Christmas music when it's not Christmas time.
I know people like
that. I actually just about a month ago started recording a Christmas cover that I'm going to hopefully eventually put out by the end of the year. But I'm already in the Christmas mode. But yeah, Christmas is something that I love, and I love the music that's associated with it. I think it comes from a place of nostalgia, like listening to Christmas music around that time of year when I was younger, and music has the ability to take you back to places you were once in life, and Christmas music definitely does that for me. Christmas, as I've gotten older, hasn't been as, the special thing it was when I was a kid, but for whatever reason, when I listen to the music, it does sort of take me back to when it was a more special time of the year. So yeah, I put together that little collection of Christmas music, I think about 2 years ago now. And I did some like traditional songs. I did like one little original Christmas song where I ripped a little vocal sample from the movie It's a Wonderful Life. And I just, it was something I did in November because I thought it'd be fun, and I put it out around Christmas time. And yeah, it's I haven't actually thought about that collection of music in quite a while, so it's nice that you brought it up because yeah, I enjoy Christmas music a lot, and that's pretty much just why I put the music out.
And that is interesting, isn't it? I really understand what you're talking about there when you're saying about how, like, maybe Christmas, like, it's not the same now as it used to be, you know, like,
Hmm.
obviously it's just, I think, a fact of getting older and things like that, you know, the
Hmm.
kind of wonder goes in that. But it's interesting how music can, like, bring you back, like, to these different mental states. Even, like, I don't know if there's times when you've, like, listened to a song you haven't heard for ages, but there was maybe a particular time in your life when you listened to it, like, quite a lot. And then, like,
Hmm.
it's like, psychologically you're kind of back there, if you know what I mean. And
Yeah.
I always found that quite interesting, like how music can do that.
Hmm. Yeah. I was actually at um, uh, a hangout with a group of friends last night, and somebody put on some '90s boy band music, and I was never, someone who was crazy about that when it came out at the time, but it was always something around when I was younger. I was maybe about 8, 9, 10 when that stuff was coming out, and it took me back instantly to my childhood. And I, you know, I don't think that music is particularly my favorite, but it does sit somewhere in my heart where, um, you know, that time of childhood existed, and that music was popular with people. And yeah, it's like a weird virtual time machine or something.
Yeah, I know what you mean. I know exactly what you mean. And I mean, where do you see your music going, or do you even know at this point?
Um, well, with the EP I just put out, I have two songs on there that feature vocals and lyrics and stuff, and I up to this point I haven't done any of that. Everything's been instrumental. So it took me a long, long time to be able to be comfortable with my own voice and lyric writing skills, of which I'm still looking to improve upon. Um, but I want the music that I'm making more in the future to be more. Um, I wouldn't say vocal oriented, but incorporate lyrics in a way that would make the music a bit more listener friendly. I've noticed I've gotten so much more feedback just from um, the two songs "Moving On" and "Alice," which are the lyric songs, and I want to do more of that because I finally got to the point where I can kind of do it with a somewhat decent grasp. And so I'm thinking of putting out an album of just completely we use the word non-instrumental, but music with lyrics on it. So I think in the future that's what's it's looking like it's going to be. And I've already started writing a handful of songs with lyrics, and um, sticking with the same tone too, of or same theme, I should say, of moving on, for lack of a better term.
Yeah.
That's the kind of the term that I'm dwelling on right now, and it's fun exploring that in music and what I can do with that.
Hmm. No, absolutely. And it's been interesting as well because, like, I've been looking through your blog, and I think in a way, like, having a blog like that, it helps you kind of understand more sort of like where you're coming from. But why
Mhm.
don't you tell us a bit about what this was the entry I found interesting, the 5 pieces of advice for my younger self entry?
Yeah, I was actually, let me pull that up because I did that a few months ago. That was one that came from a journal entry that I did, I think, yeah, back in February. Um, yeah, I'm just reading it to myself right now. I've spent the last couple of days reflecting on the past years I've had, my day-to-day routines, and how I was going about living in life. I decided to compile the thoughts into a concise and easy to digest format. Um, yeah, the last year and a half or so, I've come to a realization of um, just a handful of different things, of ways I was living life and not going about things in the best ways I possibly could. So I was making a conscientious decision for a good part of 2017 and also this year of changing my habits. And this actually can also tie in. This is funny. Back into the song, moving on. I mentioned there's a lyric, "Things need to change. I'm heading a different way." So in this little blog post that I wrote, there were 5 pieces of advice that I was kind of thinking about my younger self and kind of the things I was doing wrong. I'll list them off, I guess. Take care of yourself, properly show gratitude, keep social media to a minimum, take risks and initiative. And the 5th one is work hard and keep going. And all of those things were things I had to learn through experience and making so many mistakes and just screwing up things over and over and over again until I finally came to a realization that, okay, I need to think about what I'm doing here and think of something better, because the habits I'm in right now are not doing me any good. So those are 5 things that I came up with, just looking back on, life in general and saying, well, what are the steps I can take to make things a little better on myself? And those were the 5 things. And I wish if I think about if I could have a conversation with myself at 10, 15, 20, whatever age, this is what I would say to my younger self, and hopefully avoid a lot of the screw ups that have happened over the course of my life since then.
See, that's the thing. This is kind of something that I've thought about as well, but I kind of think that if I was confronted with myself from 10 years ago, myself from 10 years ago would not listen to anything. I don't know if there's, I honestly don't know if there's any possible way that I could convince, do you know what I mean? I wonder.
Yeah,
if
it's a bit of a stubbornness.
Yeah, I think so. I really, honestly, I don't know if it would work or not. You never know. I don't suppose I'll be in that situation anytime soon, so I'm not terribly concerned.
Yeah, neither do I.
So, were you always into the photography and the filmmaking? Because you said you were primarily kind of a musician. So how did you start kind of getting into that?
Yeah, that stuff kind of came after the fact. I was, like I said, and I still am, first and foremost a musician. I studied music in school for quite a few years, and I've always been a creative person, and music was just the first thing that I fell into at an early age and was able to really grow in and own my craft in. But then this actually ties into my college story, which is a whole nother story in of itself. But to make things short, I was majoring in music at one point, and a handful of things didn't work out with different schools, so I had ended up switching my major to communication studies with a concentration in media production. So I fell into filmmaking, and I picked up a camera and I just started shooting whatever the heck I wanted. And I started with still photography, and that it was more like a hobby, and it still kind of is like a hobby. I wouldn't say I'm a professional photographer or very skilled photographer by any means. But then I got into film, and I started filming things, real life things. That's my favorite thing to film, is real life things. I was never crazy about writing a script or putting together a cast or anything like that. But I like documentaries. I love documentaries. And so I started filming different real life scenarios and situations. I took a big trip to Iceland a few years ago now, and I filmed the whole thing, and I did some of my own original music for it, and it was kind of fun. And I like capturing what's real, and capturing what's actually in front of you and not anything that's staged, and looking at it in an artistic way. There's so many options with filmmaking where you can frame the camera in certain ways and evoke a certain emotion from it. And I love finding, I guess, the angles you can find in filmmaking and in life to approach something and portray it as something. And like back to the music, I like to communicate a certain tone with it, and it's the same tone with the music, kind of that melancholy tinge of sadness, but there's a hopeful warmth to it at the same time.
I was going to actually ask you about the Alone in Iceland documentary because I had a bit of a watch of it. So why Iceland? I mean, was it the whole Sigur Rós thing?
Yep, that's exactly right. When I got into them, I was going through all their music and everything, and they put out their documentary Heima, however you pronounce it, Heima, where they go along the Icelandic countryside and they tour in these little small villages all across the country. And I saw that and I was like, that's the most incredible place I've ever seen in my life. Like, I had never heard anybody talk about Iceland or wanting to go to Iceland or what Iceland was like. And I saw this little movie by this in America. They're not very well known. This sort of esoteric band that I had gotten into, and then got into this esoteric country that I thought was really great that nobody was ever talking about. And so, yeah, I got the opportunity to go a few years ago after being obsessed with it for, almost 10 years. And I went across the countryside and I filmed it. It felt like I was part of like National Geographic or something. And I filmed all the waterfalls and the rolling green hills and the beaches with the black sand and all this crazy, crazy, wonderful, beautiful landscape that I had longed to see for so long. And I kind of framed it within the narrative that I was alone by myself on this journey, because I didn't travel with any friends or family or anything like that. And that was the first time I had ever taken a trip. I've been overseas a couple times before that, but never by myself. So I think it was maybe about 3,000 miles from home or whatever, being that far from home, not knowing anybody, being in a country that's one of the most isolated, just like this little island in the North Atlantic Ocean, by myself for a little over a week, was this great, crazy experience where I was thinking a lot about, what loneliness is. And like I'll go back to it again, the melancholy and loneliness, and there's also this sort of warmth in it. I guess you could maybe say solitude would be a better word than loneliness, but that was the key idea behind the documentary. And there's lots of shots of just myself and these big landscapes alone, and that's an image in my mind whenever I see somebody alone in a big place in nature. There's something very moving to me about that, and I wanted to capture that, and I think I did to the best of my abilities when I put that little documentary together.
Yeah, I think you did a good job of it. And I know what you mean, like, especially when you see like, someone in the, juxtaposed with the enormity of nature. I went through this weird thing of watching documentaries about people climbing Everest, actually, and I just found it fascinating because, like, you just can't imagine like something like, I can't imagine like standing at a mountain that's that big, that high, like in that kind of alien, an atmosphere at the top where, you need oxygen and all that. It was just like, it's why I know what you mean. Like when you see a person just juxtaposed with the enormity of like something in nature, it really puts a lot of things into perspective, I think.
Oh yeah. I mean, nature is a grand, crazy, beautiful thing. And it's like all around us, and it's so massive. I sometimes don't even think we realize just how massive this creation around us is. It's insane. And it makes you feel sometimes lonely and insignificant, and especially when you're talking about Mount Everest, the biggest mountain on the face of the earth. That thing is probably overwhelming to be on in person. Yeah. I can't even imagine.
Oh, no, absolutely. And do you know what's interesting as well? Like, I'm just thinking about this. There's been a lot of like American musicians who have ended up like moving to places like Iceland and Greenland. People like John Grant, the Brian Jonestown Massacre. I think Will Oldham as well. I wonder, do you think that's maybe getting, I mean, I was going to say, is that maybe getting away from the kind of, I don't know, like to somewhere quiet instead of like I would say the noise of America in a way, but then there's a lot of quiet places in America as well. I just wonder why there's been quite a few of these artists, that have gone to these like little islands sort of.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I've been thinking about that too, because America's a huge place. And like you said, there's plenty of quiet places here, especially if you go out. maybe like to the Midwest or something, or even I live in the southern part of the state of New Jersey. So North Jersey's very industrialized, lots of cities and, you know, big industry mills and all these things. And then down south here, it's a big kind of wooded area. We have what's called the Pine Barrens, which is this big area of forest that we live in. And we also have the beach nearby too. So there's lots of variation in the places you can go in America. But yeah, I think maybe, I hate to say it, but maybe even those places in Europe have maybe been a little too romanticized a bit. But
once you get a hold of the weather.
yeah. But I will say I've you know, when I was in Iceland, I can honestly say there's no place like that in the world that I've been to. And you're from Scotland, so I've seen plenty. My sister was actually in Scotland last summer. I'm super jealous she got to go, but
cool.
Just seeing the you know, what you guys have there is, you know, not comparable to America. So
that's really,
I think it isn't. Oh yeah, I think it is important though to go out and travel and go see what else there is in the world. I mean, it's a massive, enormous place, and if you spend your whole time just in one little spot where you grow up and, you know, you age and you die and you don't experience what's around you, or way out around you, you're really gonna be missing out.
No, I think so. I think you're right. And then, do you have any kind of film plans for the future?
Nothing immediate. I'm in the very, very early planning stages. I want to do a full length documentary, and also score the whole thing. That would be, I mean, the big project on my mind right now. I haven't begun really anything with it, and I'm still working out the kinks and just even what the topic of the documentary would be. But that's what, you know, that's kind of on the bucket list to do, is a big project like that, which I would love to do.
That would be cool, actually. But like, I know those things are just such a, like, I mean, making an album's one thing, but like making a big long film is totally something else altogether. The amount of work is crazy. Yeah, that's the thing with that sort of stuff. So we're sort of coming towards the end of the show, Josh. Is there anything else that we haven't mentioned? Anything else you've got coming up that you want to mention?
No. If anybody wants to check out my work, they can check out my website, projectatlantic.com. I've got all my music on there. I think I've got 3 albums out. I've got 4 or 5 EPs, I think. And I'm constantly making new music. So if anything's ever out, it's on that website first. I'm also a bass player in a folk rock band called Thriving Seas. You can check us out online. We're on iTunes and everything like that. That's a whole nother thing in of itself, a whole nother project, which is completely different than the Project Atlantic stuff. And I'm in a completely different role in that band, which is cool too. So if anybody wants to check out, it's some folk rock music. They can check out Thriving Seas.
Awesome. I'll check that out. I always like a bit of folk rock. I always have. So yeah, Josh, thanks so much for coming on the show.
Oh, you're very welcome. Thank you for having me. I've been waiting for a long time for somebody to ask me some questions like this. So it's a cool opportunity.
So my thanks again to Josh for coming on the show. I really enjoyed it. Thought it was a good conversation, and I think Josh makes a lot of really cool and really interesting art, and it's definitely someone worth keeping an eye on in the future. So that is it for yet another show. Thank you all, as always, for listening. The website, BresnixCast.com. Follow me on Twitter at Vladimir Bresnix. My album is out. You can catch it on all your favourite digital streaming platforms. If you just search Vladimir Bresnix, you will find me. And that's us. So let's finish off with a bit more of Project Atlantic. So from the Moving On EP again, this is Alice.
Sun is shining. Get out of your bed. spend your life waiting for a moment. Oh, it's coming soon. Look above you. Skies are turning blue. Take an old song, make it something new. You spend your day counting down the hours. Oh, I'm just like you.